There's no lifestyle safe enough to avoid breakdown and re-injury. I became very aware quickly of this gap of conservative treatment for the spine, and building back from injury is only focused on everything in your core except for the low back.
Today, we're going to show you some amazing things to fix your lower back. I had a history of low back pain for many, many years. Ever since college, I did something really stupid. I tried to squat 425 pounds and blew my disc out. And ever since then, I've been struggling with a low back and sciatica type pain. I recently stumbled on some really cool information by a man named Brendan Backstrom. He found something that I never really looked at or really considered, and I wanted to bring him on to show you this information because if you have low back pain, you need to know this. Welcome, Brendan. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you shared the story of your back history and the deadlift it took for you to become aware of that potential for pain. I only needed about 300 pounds to end up in the same story, so yours is a little bit more impressive, but it's an honor.
You kind of were in a situation with a lot of people. You were basically, they were told, well, you can't ever really get to a point where it's fully resolved. You have to just kind of cope with it and do the best you can.
Yeah.
So just kind of just accept that, right? And you said, no, I'm going to see if I could figure this out, right?
Yeah, so I thought I was an isolated situation, an isolated case, in being, I only knew I had a low back once I hurt my low back. And then as I went to the doctors, I started to become very familiar with what is the current culture and mindset around the low back, and that it's something really to protect, not something to build. And it's a fact of age. And as you get older, back pain is just something that comes with life. So what does that mean if you're 21 and you started to have chronic back issues? That just means you got the unlucky draw, and now you started this spiral early. So you better buckle up and learn how to be careful. And I was in the field a little bit. I was training to try to become a physical therapist, and I thought I had a really good grasp of how to be as careful as you can be, as mechanically safe. And it turns out there's no lifestyle safe enough to avoid breakdown and re-injury. And so I became very aware quickly of this gap of the sophisticated science that has a lot of merit, and it works well for getting people out of the initial injuries and the initial pain. And many people end up in this loop that I did, which is where you become more sensitive and more vulnerable, and then you just feel disempowered and lost. And I thought it was just me. I only found out through sharing on the internet and people, surprising to my surprise, resonating, that it turns out there's lots of people of all ages in this sort of state, and they just want to know there's any hope to build the back.
I mean, if you look up, low back pain, it's all about, well, if you've injured your back, you have to protect it, right? You have to squat down very carefully, make sure you don't re-injure it. Tell us a little bit about the point where you said, wait a second, there's something neglected here. There's something missing.
Yeah, so it's a very standard approach to view the core as the protection for the low back, and I completely agree, and we do well with that. I don't know what led me to this sort of questioning, but I started to view the core as like the core of an apple. It's the center point of everything that's meant to protect you, and so much vital organs and the spine. But when you are in sports medicine, the core is mainly talked about with the things in front, with your abs, with the sides, with the obliques, and deeper, maybe transverse abdominis, these muscles that are known to stabilize you, which is important. But then I started to see I've never gotten hurt my oblique. I've never gotten hurt on the side. I keep getting hurt at the direct, weak chink in my armor, which is my low back directly. So when I started to look at the core through just a textbook, without the teaching of how to train it, but just anatomy-wise, it seemed like a more fitting concept of the core as a 360 barrel, also with the ceiling and also with the floor. So you have the front of the abs, which we train a lot of in gym culture and lifting. We've all done sit-ups. We have the obliques. We have some of the deeper side muscles, the stabilizers. But then in the spine, there's this wall of tissue. You have layers with the big ones, spinal erectors, that keep you upright. But then you also have segment by segment, little musculature that almost hugs the bones of the spine and gives you true stability in circulation close to all the problem area. So majority of conservative treatment for the spine and building back from injury is only focused on everything in your core except for the low back.
That's
I
wow.
understand why. It's the most scary, it's the most frightening to touch because it's the most sensitive. So it's actually very safe advice in the short term to just not touch it. But then in the long term, it guarantees an acceleration of breakdown and decay. So that's how I ended up to that sort of mindset.
If anyone's watching, basically, he's stumbled on the back part of this core, which is part of the spine, are basically just very, very, very weak, and it's going to keep you very fragile. So his program is pretty cool because he found a way to get the back really strong on a really nice gradual way. As you said in your video, you could very easily overdo it. So here's another principle I want you to talk about. When you rehab the lower back, if you want to call it that, or you want to strengthen or balance it out, um, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way. So just kind of talk a little bit about that, because that's kind of like an underlying principle of your whole program, as far as you do this on a very gradual level so you don't re-injure yourself.
Right. So one of the most delicate processes is going to be reestablishing communication with an area of the body that you have either masked or avoided for so long. So we don't know what a productive low back stimulus may feel like. And so what that means practically is many of us have gone to the gym and done bicep curls, and we know what that feels like. We may go and train our legs and feel a pump in the quads, and we know what that feels like. But after many re-injuries and becoming more sensitive and having more breakdown in that area of the back, when you go to train your low back, you have to be slower than you think. Not training to the level of the strength of the muscles. You have to train to a concept which I've tried to teach people of tissue tolerance. Lowest sensitivity of your most fragile tissue, that's what's going to set the pace for this sort of training. And so if we go to the back training I show, a lot of times I may show the further stages because I'm proud of what I've built to and I want to inspire others who are starting from an injured place. But the starting point is actually scaled back to something that almost doesn't look like training. It could just be holding your torso up at a certain angle for 30 seconds and you're just squeezing the low back muscles gently without any motion. And then you see almost through a bit of survivorship bias. Did you make it through that with no pain? Is the next day, do you have any increase of symptoms? If not, that's your current capacity. You now got a little bit more familiarized that your back can handle that. And so it's not all or nothing. I think the mindset I really try to get people out of is this light switch mentality versus turning dials. It's not avoid the back or train the back. It's all spectrum, slightly more this week than last week. And the truth of it is, you may sometimes go into a flare up, which is you overdid it, you crossed the line, and now you're in a little bit of pain. And this is actually sometimes useful for people as well. It's not fun to go through, but sometimes you have to cross the line to know where the line is. And you go, that's my true capacity level. Most people avoid all sensation in their back, good or bad. And the only time they feel their low back is in an awkward tweak when they reach for something and they get that spasm or that realization, that reminder, your low back's vulnerable. So I try to teach people to meet their low back and get some experience and evidence. And it's a very slow process.
So you're basically going from this complete disconnect from your lower back to fully in communication with your back, and you're really you're aware of what's happening, you're doing it. Why don't you go through some of these exercises to show people what you're talking about?
Sure. The most direct stimulus we could try to get to the low back is simply anything that moves our shoulders in front of our hips. The muscles in our low back just keep us upright. They're called spinal erectors. Erect means upright. If you didn't have low back muscles, you would just collapse. So what we're going to do, instead of going into range of something that's scary, you can get on this machine and just hold the position. And it may not look like much, but even 30 seconds on this, for a lot of people, could cause extreme pain the next day if they overdo it. So this isn't even the most bare starting point. You could start lower. You could put the pad very high and you could have it up to your chest. You could start lower and it could be up to the shoulders. Pretty much, the more body weight that you're holding, the more that's hanging off the machine, the more weight your low back is holding yourself up. So you find any level within that spectrum and you'll hold for 30 seconds, calm, trying to get your nervous system relaxed, deep breathing, trying to keep your system in this most away from the fight or flight state. And then over time, you can increase the time to maybe a minute, 2 minutes. This is what I call making daily deposits. You're investing. It's almost as if you're in back debt. You have very little money to invest. You have to microdose. And then after 3-4 months, the person that was extremely sensitive to even do 10 seconds may work up to 2 minutes. And at that point, then you start to actually work range, and you can start to use the vertebrae piece by piece, going through half the range. Usually these machines have handles, and you could go and just do 10 with a slight round in the back. Give it a few months, give it 8 weeks, and then you could go further and see, can you actually go inverted? And then you reach a point where you're getting decompression of the spine, which many people know is great for relief. But then what's missing is the recompression. So if you're at the bottom inverted, my discs are actually starting to separate in space. The vertebrae are giving more space. But as I piece my back together with all the small muscles, now I'm getting the strength to recompress. And so that's what you start to build direct stimulus to the spine, the muscles all around, those intraspinal little muscles I was describing earlier, and you create piece by piece stability again that you may have lost for a decade. So this journey alone, I just showed it in 3 minutes. Most people, if they're starting from a chronic place of pain, it's going to take about 2 years to go from gentle holds to what I showed. 30 reps is a very good body weight goal for anyone who wants to get to an active lifestyle with sports, even just to have longevity well into your 50s and 60s and onwards with a strong back. This is the best protection that you could get directly for anything that you may get in an injury picking up stuff. Anything that gives you fear, this is going to be your best measure of how protected is my low back. You can build your own back brace. That's my slogan.
See, when you're doing this, what you're doing is you're creating a whole bunch of things in addition just to stronger muscle. You're pumping blood flow, you're getting your discs to get circulation, you're also stretching out the fascia. Fascia is like the wetsuit around your body, but you also have fascia around the nerves, the nerve roots. And I think even with me, there's a lot of scar tissue in the fascia that every time I would move or bend over, it would just pull on that nerve. So it's not necessarily a disc on a nerve directly, an impingement, because you can even look on an MRI. It's like, oh, no, it's the disc is not pressing on it. It's the soft tissue that doesn't show up. And with these stretches and strengthening exercises done on a real nice level, I think what you said even in your video, like it starts to now glide. You start creating less friction around that nerve root, right?
Yeah.
Especially if someone has sciatica.
Yeah, sciatica is very tricky because it's exactly that. We immediately assume that the original cause of our pain is the same exact source of our chronic problems. And many times it's not. The original disc herniations are more common than the flu sometimes. About 60-70% of people around on the street may have some form of bulge over the age of 30. Now, the reason it becomes chronic back pain is the secondary dysfunction, the breakdown of the supporting muscles, the memory of fascia. Fascia basically can hold your tissue in the position it was in when it was injured. Take away that disc bulge, you take away that inflammation, but the fascia, if you don't move, it just becomes stuck and can even continue to remodel in that stuck position. So now your body learns at this segment of the spine, we're extra tight, and the fascia reflects that. And so the only way that we have, holistic control of that is what we do with our body. And so sciatica is a tough one because it's a tissue that when it's working right, we don't feel it. We don't want to feel nerves. That's kind of the goal. So we can work the entire path of the nerve, and basically from the nerve root of the spine, down the glute, down the back of the leg, through the calf to the big toe. In the program, I teach people to very gradually strengthen and try to reactivate muscle all the way along the path that the sciatic nerve can branch off to.
I like even in your program because you get into, you do not want to put yourself into a painful position. You're working on this to the point you'll know when to go more because there'll be no pain.
And you have to, and because that's where I'm trying to do a more thorough and better job of educating this with longer videos. Because if you give me 60 seconds to explain how to get into this, it's going to be very difficult because there's so much nuance that depends on your sensitivity and your level. And the same thing, it's like all of health and medicine, it's the dosage that's the devil. It's like the
Mhm.
application and how you do it. Low back is very tricky given the neurology of it. There's so much potential to feel nerve issues and the innervation of it versus an elbow. So you have to be very in tune and very slow, never just push past the pain because your body's going to learn this is actually worse for me when it could be the best thing you need. The most potent healer, I say, if something's potent as an exercise, is a high potential to heal or a high potential to harm, depending on how you do it.
Now, here you have a person who injures the back and then they get scar tissue. One of the worst things you can do for fascia is inactivity. Just like a person in a nursing home, they become, they get stuck in this position because they're not moving. And then on top of that, as you're not moving or you're maybe stuck in a certain position, you end up getting atrophy of all the spinal erectate muscles. Here you are maybe doing your abdomen, your six pack ab program, or your
Mm.
other exercises, and that back muscle is the weak link. I mean, yeah, that's a really, really good observation that we don't ever end up with like pain in our abdomen or our sides. It's always in the back. And just to really strengthen that back muscle. It was so severe for you, right? You like constant pain, didn't you, when you were at your worst?
If we were doing this interview 3 years ago, you would have saw me actually turn the chair and sit on this glute and then sit on this glute because I had this chronic SI joint pain, which is right where the base of the spine meets the pelvis, your sacrum. It wasn't even at the site of my disc problem anymore. It spread. And so your body becomes so avoidant of certain positions that it compensates, and my hips move to one side. And now I had this chronic, constant pain just deep in the glutes on that joint. And it actually led to me sitting all the time off one side. So my hips became set in this
Mhm.
lateral hip shift. And I'm still lifting. I'm still trying to exercise better than inactivity. So what happens when I squat? I'm squatting like this. And then I got hip
Oh, yeah.
impingement in my right hip. So because it wasn't properly aligned, the ball in the socket was now grinding weird. And then I got a sports hernia on that same side, which it turns out they've done, studies and people that got surgeries for sports hernias that about 70% of them, when they were in there operating, they just look at the hip capsule and they see signs of hip impingement. So many people at this lineage of disc problem, hip imbalance, hip socket problem, ab tear, the sports hernia, I get comments from dozens of people. I've had that exact lineage. So it was so severe, it became a whole body problem. Again, I thought I was alone in this till I shared it.
If you look at some of his videos, he'll do that back extension with weights. I'm talking like, is that 245-pound
Yeah.
weights on, and you're basically bending over on your back. So to do that, you have to really build up that back muscle in your extensors. I mean, that's like crazy amount of weight. So to go from can't even do it at all to do that much weight, and plus, I think you, if I'm not mistaken, you also do some squats as well, right?
Yep. I do lift traditionally. I just made sure that I never skipped the low back ever again. And so I wanted to be a product
Right.
of the product. And it's actually the best compliment sometimes or comments of people saying, you never had a back injury, because there's no way you could get back to that point. It's ironic, but it's such a good feeling when you have such a good low back and that was the worst aspect of your body for many years. It's just our health is remarkably in our control.
Amazing. So just to kind of summarize, there's a series of exercises. That was one of them that you put people through on a nice gradual level from where
Yep,
wherever they're at to where they need to be over time, and you have information on like the principles of why you're doing that.
exactly. Every single exercise is a journey of step 1 through 10. So every exercise has a level that you take your grandmother through, and then you could take your friend who's trying to be an Olympian, and you find where you are on that gradient. And then alongside, we have these education modules. I didn't want to, make a course and have to teach too much. I like the XYZ, do this blueprint. However, the context matters a lot for every exercise. So I, alongside, teach people how do you train these exercises. This isn't a 6-week get lean program. This is a 1 to 2 year remodel the deepest part of your body program. So, yep, the roadmap of exercises very thorough with all the regressions. The education side of it tries to match any problem you may come in with and give you the nuance that would make all the difference. We also have a really good community with thousands of people in a chat that are just sharing their stories and just uplifting. And so, I try to give what people may need only from thinking of what would I have desperately needed 5 years ago that didn't exist.
And I think the most impressive thing is what you charge. It's basically whatever the person feels they want to pay.
Yeah, the slogan is pay what you want. The entire model, people sign up and it's a monthly subscription. You can cancel whenever. You can pay $2. Some people have paid 200. It's what it means to you, and you can also change it. I don't expect you to trust an internet stranger to charge you thousands. That was a thing. I tried to find stuff I could do years ago, but it was behind a paywall of thousands of dollars.
Your exchange between the person is so nice and even because so many programs, you don't even know if it's going to work paying all this money. I think that's a great way to keep your level of exchange in with people because they
Yeah.
would appreciate it.
Yeah, it's anti-marketing for sure, which some would say is great marketing. But me and my business partner joke about it all the time that you're taught a lot of times to price something very high because that changes the perceived value. It's like, well, that must be a great program if it's thousands of dollars. And when you really have something that is authentic and there's nothing hidden, and you're not afraid to just put it out there, the people will tell you what it's worth. And people oftentimes message me,
Yeah,
hey, I was skeptical, but after 8 weeks, I'm just in awe. I'm going to up the subscription because they want to support me, supporting people. And so there's a lot of bells and whistles out there,
that's awesome.
and when you have something real, I don't
Yeah,
think you have to rely on that. I never thought I'd be in this position to even help people for free, let alone make money from it. And for me, I just want this gap of ignorance to be bridged. That's my main long game, is to get as many people in this shift as they can and leave the hopelessness of the back loop.
that's awesome. Well, I'm going to put your link down below. I highly recommend everyone sign up for it. You'll get a download, videos. I think this is awesome, a game changer. And then put down your comments on how this program has helped you because I don't do these interviews very often with people, but when I see something that I really think would work, I'm definitely going to promote it. So
Thank
thank you so much for taking your time to be on
you. Is an
this
honor.
video.
I'm extremely grateful. I hope this really can help some people, and I'm really impressed your openness of someone who's, I mean, you're very young and healthy, but I am half your age, and to be open from where insight may come from, I think is admirable, and this is why people look to you as the beacon for health and taking personal accountability in it. So I'm just honored to be a part, and I'm extremely grateful. So thank you.
Oh,
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
awesome.
Thanks.